She took the last sip of coffee like it was any other Tuesday. No tension, no guilt, just a quiet slurp and a slight clink as the mug touched the counter. Then, casually, almost rehearsed, she slid the chair back and stood up, pulling her cardigan tighter like she had somewhere important to be. And that's when she said it. I'm going out. With my lover. Not I'm sorry. Not we need to talk. Not even it's not you. It's me. No prelude. No softening. Just tossed it in the air like a grenade she had no intention of looking back at. She reached for her keys like she'd just asked if I wanted anything from the store. I didn't move. I didn't blink. I just smiled, slow and deliberate, like I was watching the last domino stand right before the cascade. There will be consequences. She chuckled, light, dismissive, nasal. Not real laughter, the kind that wants to provoke, the kind that dares you to react. What? Are you going to start journaling about your feelings? Call your therapist and cry about betrayal over Zoom? Her coat was already halfway on when I opened the drawer next to the sink. She didn't flinch. She thought I'd pull out a wine opener and spiral into another bottle. She had no idea what I was really reaching for. The envelope had no name, just a small dot of red wax. She didn't notice it when I slipped it into my jacket. She wouldn't have understood it even if she did. You remember Ron? I said, straightening my cuffs, slowly, like I had all the time in the world. Her eyes narrowed. Your lawyer. Not just my lawyer, I said, grabbing my phone off the island. Ron keeps receipts. And he has a taste for creative structuring. She rolled her eyes and shook her head like she was dealing with a child throwing a tantrum in public. You're bluffing. You always bluff. You don't even know who he is. You're right, I said. But he knows you. There was a flicker. Not fear. Not yet. But something began to itch at her certainty. She stalled at the door. You're not serious, she said. But her hand hovered over the doorknob a second too long. Her reflection in the glass of the hallway cabinet caught her hesitation even if she wouldn't admit it. I was never serious. That was the problem, I said, stepping past her, opening the door for her. Now I am. And then I watched something shift in her face, a crack, maybe, or a calculation. She stepped out but didn't move. The hallway was quiet. The elevator light above glowed red. You're making a mistake, she said, quieter now. You've been making them for months. I'm just finally responding, I said. Then I leaned in, just slightly, so only she could hear me. By the way, you left something in the guest bathroom drawer. Third one down. Might want to check that before Friday. Her lips parted, but she said nothing. Not because she didn't want to, but because she didn't know what I was referring to, which told me everything. She turned and walked toward the elevator. Slow at first, then faster. No more laughter. The door clicked shut behind her, and I was already dialing. Not Ron. Not yet. First, I needed to speak to someone else. Someone whose name she would not remember, but who remembered her very, very well. Someone from last October. Someone who had once been invisible in our home, but saw everything. Her name was Mallory. Most people called her just the cleaner. I called her the first domino. She worked Tuesdays and Fridays. Paid cash, no records, no fuss. My wife never noticed her. Never asked her name. Never made eye contact. She'd walk in while Mallory scrubbed the baseboards, mutter something about airing the place out, and then vanish for hours. Like clockwork. What she didn't know was that Mallory noticed everything. And more importantly, she wrote things down. Not for me. Not at first. But last October, Mallory had a scare. She saw something, heard something, and thought she might be in trouble. So she came to me. It was the day I left work early because of a canceled meeting. I walked into the kitchen, set my briefcase down, and she was there, standing unnaturally still with a bottle of granite spray clenched like it could defend her. Her eyes darted to the hallway. She doesn't know I heard, she said. No hello. No explanation. Just that. But you should. I offered her tea. She refused. Instead, she reached into her apron pocket and handed me a folded note. Not a letter. Not a complaint. A list. Names. Places. Times. Not hers. My wife's. At the top. Thursday, yoga, 3:40 p.m., Tanager Building, floor 6. Here's the thing. The Tanager Building has no yoga studio. Just law firms and a real estate development office. The 6th floor? Lease records, unlisted. One of those offices with frosted glass and no signage. I remember my hands not shaking. That surprised me. I asked her one question. Why give this to me? Her answer, because I clean around dead marriages. I don't want to be in one when it dies. Since then, I paid her more. And she gave me more. Receipts. Patterns. Photos, not of them, never that easy, but of bags left near elevators, receipts in trash cans, business cards with just initials and numbers. And one thing stood out. A single piece of paper she left for me 2 weeks ago, no comment attached. Just a typed itinerary for a weekend business retreat in Savannah. Only it had a note scribbled at the bottom. No pets. No kids. Must bring ID and bracelet. My wife has never been to Savannah. Never worn a bracelet outside weddings. And we don't have pets. I tucked that copy inside the envelope with the red wax seal. That's the one I carried in my jacket when I left the apartment after she walked out. I didn't call Ron. Not yet. I needed to see someone else first. His name is Charles. My former business partner. Now retired, but still very much in the loop. See, there's a building under renovation on East 11th, wrapped in black mesh and scaffolding. Looks abandoned. But the 6th floor belongs to Charles. And Charles owes me a favor. A very specific kind of favor. When I entered the building through the side alley entrance, I didn't need to knock. The elevator only responds to a chipped key fob, which I still had from a decade ago. He was already waiting in the open space, no furniture, no fixtures, just concrete, wires, and a folding table with a pitcher of water and a small metal box. Thought you said you'd never come back here, he said, not looking up. I dropped the envelope on the table. I lied. He opened it, took one look at the contents, and let out a quiet, low whistle. Well, he said, tapping the itinerary with the back of his pen, she's in deeper than I thought. You know the place? He nodded slowly. It's not just a hotel. It's an access point. Access to what? That, he said, depends who's paying. I said nothing. He looked up at me. Are you ready for her to owe you? I met his eyes. She already does. Then you need to move fast, he said. You've got a 48-hour window. After that, your lawyer friend won't be enough. I nodded. I didn't ask him how he knew about Ron. I already knew. Everyone who's been burned in this city knows Ron. And they really know his work. Which means she was about to. Charles didn't ask questions. He just reached for the small metal box beside the envelope and opened it like a man unsealing something sacred or dangerous. Inside, there was a small device, looked like a flash drive, but longer, sleeker, almost surgical. It had no branding, no label, just a single button in the center. This, he said, sliding it toward me, is the only copy. I didn't touch it yet. Copy of what? He gave me that look. The one you give someone who's about to dig up a buried body and ask why it smells. Security feed. 6th floor. Tanager building. My mouth stayed shut. My mind didn't. She told me she had therapy on Thursdays. Something about self-growth, inner alignment, and all the usual New Age nonsense. Sometimes she'd come home with a yoga mat she didn't use, sometimes with wet hair, claiming she'd cried through the session. I always played along. I even offered to go with her once, just to be supportive. She said I wouldn't understand the emotional language of healing, that I'd contaminate the space. Turns out, the only thing getting realigned was her body. On someone else's couch. Charles slid a small tablet across the table. Watch. The footage was grainy, time-stamped, dated, but not faked. At 3:47 p.m., my wife stepped off the elevator, alone. She wore that dull beige jacket she keeps for casual appointments, the one she never takes selfies in. It blended into the drab hallway like she wanted to be invisible. But the man who opened the office door for her wasn't invisible at all. Tall. Shaved head. No tie, but too polished to be maintenance. She stepped inside. 38 minutes later, she stepped out. She wasn't smiling. But her eyes had that distant gloss, the kind you get when you're somewhere else entirely, and the body's just along for the ride. I watched it twice. Then I pushed the tablet back. You said that's the only copy? Charles nodded. Of the raw feed. But the drive, he tapped the device again, has a software imprint. It can trigger the failsafe. He didn't have to explain. I knew what it meant. Once uploaded, it would distribute the footage. Not to the public. Not yet. Just to specific inboxes. Her sister. Her business partner. Her mentor from the women's leadership cohort. Her new therapist. The one she met through her support circle. I didn't need the world to see your truth. Just the right people. I'm not ready to pull it yet, I said. You're sure? Charles asked. I want to see what she does next. Let her get comfortable. Let her think she's in control. Charles smirked. You're more patient than I expected. I've been patient for a year, I said. What's one more week? I pocketed the drive, shook his hand, and left the building through the freight stairs. As I walked out, I passed a courier by the entrance, a young guy with a stack of slim parcels and envelopes in a plastic crate. I didn't think twice about it. Until I got home. There was a package on our kitchen counter. No postage. No return address. Just my name, written in my wife's handwriting. Neat. Deliberate. Almost elegant. I opened it. Inside was a tie. My tie. Navy blue with a silver diagonal stripe. I hadn't seen it in 6 months. It was folded, pressed, and smelled faintly of a cologne I didn't recognize. Underneath the tie was a note. 5 words. Nothing else. I told you I knew. I stared at those words for a long time. Then at the tie. She never liked that tie. She once said it made me look like I was trying too hard to impress people who didn't care. But she remembered it. She remembered enough to use it now. Which meant she wasn't laughing anymore. She was watching. And she wanted me to know she was. That night, I didn't sleep. Not because I was spiraling or overwhelmed. No. I stayed up because I knew something rare was happening. She had just made her first move. The tie wasn't a peace offering. It wasn't nostalgia. It was a shot across the bow. A message tucked inside familiarity. She was saying, you're not the only one with eyes. And that meant she was aware of something. Maybe not everything, but enough to strike preemptively. I poured a glass of bourbon I didn't drink, turned on the hallway lights, then turned them off again. If she was watching, I wanted her wondering why I hadn't reacted, why I hadn't brought it up, why I was still silent. I was laying bait, and she took it. At 7:12 a.m., my phone buzzed with a message from her. Can we talk later? Tonight, maybe. Translation, I'm not sure what you know, but I think I may have gone too far. I didn't reply. By 7:14, she followed up. I just feel like we've both been tense. I want to clear the air. No drama. She still didn't know. She was casting feelers. She wanted to know my version of the truth before she volunteered hers. I gave her nothing. Silence is a language manipulators hate. It doesn't let them mirror, twist, or redirect. And she had perfected all 3. At 8 o'clock sharp, she returned home. Same cardigan. Same cool expression. She walked past me in the kitchen like she lived in another dimension. Only this time, she paused. Did you get my gift? She asked. I looked up from my coffee, neutral. You mean the tie? She smiled, warm and performative. I just found it when I was reorganizing the office closet. Thought you'd want it back. The closet you said you never touch because of the dust mites? That wiped the smile. A flicker, barely there, but I clocked it. I had gloves, she replied too fast. Of course. She sat at the island across from me, fingers laced. Watching. I've been thinking, she started, slow and measured. Maybe we should take a break. Not a separation. Just space. She was testing my reaction, waiting for panic. She still thought I was clinging to the wreckage of what we used to be. I leaned back, nodding slightly. Sounds reasonable. She blinked. That's it. What did you expect? Tears. A Hallmark monologue. She smiled again, this time tighter. No. I guess I just thought it might be harder for you. Oh, it is, I said, standing. Hard to keep pretending I don't know who you really are. Her smile froze midair. I walked to the sink and rinsed my untouched coffee down the drain, listening to the silence behind me stretch thinner than a wire. Then, just as I placed the mug in the drying rack, I turned and looked her dead in the eye. By the way, I said, Charles says hello. The effect was microscopic but immediate. Her pupils twitched. Her throat shifted. She blinked exactly twice. Charles. Yeah. You probably don't remember him. Old business partner. Owns a floor in the Tanager building. That one landed. She stood up slowly, pretending to stretch like she had a cramp, avoiding my gaze now. Look, she muttered. I have a lot on my plate today. Can we just, maybe reset tonight? I nodded once. Sure. We'll reset. As she left the kitchen, she pulled her phone from her pocket. Not to check texts. To call. I caught a glimpse of the screen in the hallway mirror. S. No last name. Just the initial. Saved with a red heart. S. I'd seen it before. 3 times, actually. Once scribbled in Mallory's list next to Bookstore Cafe. Once on the folded envelope Charles showed me. Return address initialed only. And once on a small booking confirmation I'd found wedged inside her gym bag 2 weeks ago. From a boutique hotel in the mountains. That same hotel's Wi-Fi router name. Sweets. She was getting sloppy. Or overconfident. Or maybe both. But it was too early to act. Let her call him. Let her tell him we might have a problem. Because by the time they figured out what that problem really was, the list of people involved would be much longer than either of them expected. And none of them would be ready for Ron. By Thursday, her tone had shifted. She was no longer pretending things were normal. No more saccharine smiles or lazy half-hugs as she walked past. The air between us had changed, heavier, quieter, sharper. Like she knew the wire was tightening, but couldn't tell where the tension was coming from. That morning, I found her in the living room, not dressed for work, not on her phone, not even moving. Just sitting on the edge of the couch in her robe, staring blankly at the turned-off TV. No coffee, no music. The robe was belted too tight. Her jaw clenched. She didn't look at me when she spoke. What's going on? Simple words. But that voice, that wasn't curiosity. That was fear trying to disguise itself as control. I took my time answering. Poured a cup of black coffee, opened the window halfway, let the breeze creep in. What do you mean? I asked, sipping. Something wrong. You tell me, she snapped. You've been off. Have I? She stood. Fast. Too fast. Don't play games with me. I tilted my head slightly, amused by the irony. You're really not a fan of games now, huh? She blinked. Once. Twice. Look, if there's something you want to say, say it. Enough with the cryptic little digs. I wasn't being cryptic, I said, placing the coffee down. I was just thinking out loud. About you. About Charles. About Thursdays. That name again. That wrong name. Who the hell is Charles? She asked. Too loud, too quickly. You've met him. Or walked past him, at least. She hesitated, then took a step forward. If you think I'm cheating on you, then be a man and say it. Stop circling around it like some kind of petty high schooler. Oh, I know you're cheating, I said calmly. But that's not what this is about anymore. That stopped her. The room went still. She stared at me, eyes narrowed, arms folded across her chest like she was trying to hold her body inside itself. Then what is this about? She asked, quieter now. I think you know. And then I watched something shift in her face. Not guilt, not shame, calculation. This was the moment. The one where she'd decide how to play it. Deny? Deflect? Cry? She chose the most dangerous option. She smiled. Oh, you found out about him. So what? She said, almost relaxed now. Yes, I have a lover. I'm not sorry. And guess what? He treats me better than you ever did. There it was. The big reveal. Only it wasn't a reveal. It was a defense. She thought confessing on her terms would regain control, that owning the betrayal would take the sting out of it. As if I hadn't already mapped the entire affair down to the parking lot security cameras and the dry cleaning receipts she forgot to hide. I know, I said. But thank you for confirming the exact timeline. That'll be helpful. Her eyes flicked. Helpful for what? Legal purposes. You're bluffing. Am I? I picked up the small black folder from the side table and opened it, slowly, like peeling back a scab. Inside were printed pages, copies of receipts, appointment logs, printouts of hotel policies, and a notarized statement from Mallory. She moved to snatch it, but I pulled it back. I wouldn't, I said. That's not the only copy. Not even close. Her mouth opened, then closed again. She stepped back, eyes scanning the room like she just realized she'd walked into a trap. And oh, she had. She fell onto the couch, suddenly pale. You've been spying on me. No, I corrected. I've been preparing. Why? Because I knew you'd do this. I just didn't know when. Her voice cracked. Do what exactly? I tilted my head, letting the silence speak. Then, destroy everything. Yourself, me, our reputation. But don't worry, I'm not trying to stop you. I'm just making sure when it all burns, I walk away with the house keys. Her lips moved, but no sound came out. She wasn't ready for that version of me, the one that wasn't begging, the one that had already made the moves while she was busy fantasizing about escape routes. And then the next phase began, desperation wearing a friendly mask. "Look," she said, standing again. "We're both angry. I get it. Things got complicated. But we don't have to destroy each other." "Oh," I said with a dry smile. "I don't want to destroy you. That's Ron's job." She flinched. "Ron, my lawyer. You remember him. You sent him a Christmas card 2 years ago." What does Ron have to do with this?" "Everything," I said. "Because what you don't realize is this, you and him, it was never the issue. It's what you tied it to that changed the game." She looked confused, but that confusion was temporary. She just hadn't figured out the real stakes yet. But she would. And soon, so would he. She didn't speak for a full minute. Not because she was speechless. No, she was calculating. You could see it behind her eyes, the rapid-fire assessment of what I might know versus what she hoped I didn't. Her breathing stayed steady, but her jaw clenched just enough to betray the panic beginning to pulse through her. She was shifting strategies now, abandoning guilt, bypassing anger, heading straight toward negotiation. "I think we should sit down," she said finally, as if that would reset the room, pull the fire alarm, and send us all back to homeroom. "This is getting out of hand." "Not for me," I replied. She gestured toward the folder in my hand. "You're going to ruin both of us." "That's incorrect," I said, placing it down on the mantel next to a wedding photo she hadn't noticed I'd turned face down a week ago. "I'm going to ruin you. I'm just going to be mildly inconvenienced." "Come on," she said with a dry laugh, stepping forward like we were still married. This isn't who you are." "Then maybe you never paid attention." She stopped mid-step. The dynamic had shifted. I wasn't performing grief anymore. I wasn't debating whether I wanted revenge or peace. I'd already decided, and she knew it. "You don't know what you're playing with," she said, tone darkening. "This goes beyond us." There it was. The slip. She tried to pull it back instantly. "I mean, there are people involved. People who shouldn't." No, please," I said, gesturing. "Go on." "What people?" She closed her mouth like a trapdoor slamming shut. Too late. That was the final piece I'd been waiting for. Confirmation that this wasn't just an affair. That it was layered. That he wasn't just some gym trainer or co-working space philosopher she fell into bed with out of boredom. No, this was tied to something. And I already had a guess. The bracelet. The red S. The retreat booking. The strange offshore payment my accountant flagged in January under wellness consultancy, which I had written off as a clerical error. "You think this is about you and him," I said slowly. "It's not. It's about the access you gave him." She froze. And now we were no longer talking about marriage. We were talking about business. See, 3 years ago, she started attending executive connection summits. High-end, invite-only events for entrepreneurs, consultants, and advisors. She called them growth incubators. What I found odd was that these summits had no website, no published itinerary, and only first names on the name tags. When I asked about it once, she said, "You wouldn't get it. It's spiritual infrastructure for modern influence." That phrase never left me, because she started using it around the same time our company data had a breach we couldn't trace. Right around when our pitch deck started surfacing in competitor proposals. Not full copies, just enough overlaps to make your stomach sink. And I realized then, her lover wasn't just stealing me from her life. He was stealing pieces of my life to feed something else. "Did you give him the Dropbox folder?" I asked flatly. She blinked hard. "What Dropbox folder?" I turned toward her, stepped in close. "The one labeled Q4, venture out, the one I had password until you miraculously guessed it right after we talked about it during dinner." Her mouth moved, but no sound came out. That was her tell. She never stammered. She evaded. "I don't know what you're talking about," she finally said, softer now. "No," I said. "You do. You just don't know what I've already traced." Then I stepped back, walked over to my desk drawer, and pulled out a second folder. This one thicker. Inside, logs, timestamps, IP addresses, correspondence summaries, screenshots, all compiled by Ron's preferred shadow analyst. A woman named Lila who used to work for a digital intelligence firm that only took cash and never asked for real names. I flipped to a specific page and held it out. This is the IP address your lover's phone connected from. 3 times under your home login. Once in December. Twice in February. During nights you said you were asleep in the guest room because of your migraine. You went behind my back. Just returning the favor. She looked down at the page, then up at me. Her voice was low, almost impressed. You're really doing this? I nodded once. She swallowed hard, stepped back, and said, then you should know something. I waited. She glanced around, as if to make sure we were alone, even though the house had been silent for hours. There's someone else involved, she said. Not him. Someone higher up. Someone who funds it. That caught my attention. She didn't realize it, but she just overplayed again. Because if he was getting funding, then this wasn't about access. It was about leverage. And she had been the bait. I leaned in. Names, I said. I can't, she replied. You don't understand. You can't go up against them. I didn't say anything. I just reached for my phone and hit the contact labeled Ron. She lunged forward. Wait. Don't. But I held up a finger. Ron, I said, once he picked up. Begin phase 2. And make sure Lila gets the full clearance log from Savannah. A pause. Then I added, and Ron? You remember the phrase? Through the speaker, his voice was calm as ice. Never start a war you didn't finish the first time. My wife sat back down slowly, knees suddenly weak. She had no idea what she'd actually ignited. But she was about to find out. Because Ron's revenge didn't arrive all at once. It arrived in layers. The house felt different the next morning. Not colder, emptier. Like some part of her had already evacuated. The makeup bag was missing from the vanity. The drawer where she kept her chargers and spare earrings was half open and hollow. A pair of heels vanished from the shoe rack, but her toothbrush was still in the holder. She was playing the oldest card in the book, the maybe I am leaving, maybe I am not maneuver. Pack enough to look serious. Leave just enough to imply she's still entitled to walk back in. But I wasn't watching the door anymore. I was watching her funders. Because when she said someone higher up was involved, I didn't brush it off. I knew she wasn't the architect of this mess. She was just the key under the doormat. And someone had been turning it. At 9:14 a.m., Lila sent me a folder through our encrypted drop. One word in the subject line, cross-match. I opened it on the office laptop, the one she didn't know I used. Inside were screenshots, metadata maps, invoice trails, and, at the very bottom, a photograph that made everything else click into place. It was a handshake. My wife's lover, S. Grinning, holding a scotch glass with a wedge of lime, a weird detail I remembered because she once told me real men drink it neat. Shaking hands with someone who absolutely should not have been there. The man in the photo? Martin Habridge, executive board member of Stratusbridge Ventures, one of our largest investors. Silent partner. Very behind the scenes. Until now. And that bracelet? The one from the Savannah itinerary? Lila had enhanced a shot of Habridge's wrist. Same one. Red clasp. Silver infinity knot. Not available for sale anywhere. Only issued internally to attendees of something called The Loop. No social presence. No digital trail. Just a few vague references buried in offshore financial disclosures tied to executive development events hosted at private properties in 4 states. I called Charles. He answered on the second ring, already walking. Tell me about The Loop. He exhaled like I just asked him for his soul. You sure you want to know? I'm past that point. There was a long pause. Then, The Loop's not a company. It's a conduit. A network built on the pretense of mentorship and elite growth. They find people with access. Wives, mostly. Partners. Executive assistants. People who can get into rooms without raising alarms. And then, they make deals behind the deals. Quiet ones. They don't steal data. They just redirect influence. Sometimes it's a vote. Sometimes it's who gets to present first. Sometimes it's taking a project right before funding. An S. Recruiter. Groomer. Professional parasite. Your wife was perfect, smart, invisible, overlooked. You have no idea how often the profile works. I did now. So, I asked, is this where you tell me to back off? No, Charles said. This is where I ask if you're ready to burn 2 empires at once. Yours. And theirs. I paused. What happens if I do? You'll need to detonate it with precision. Because if you just throw the bomb and run, you'll catch fire too. I smiled. I didn't come here to run. He hung up without another word. 10 minutes later, I got a text from Ron. Green light. Delivery tomorrow. 9:45 a.m. Be ready to act within 12 hours. That was the thing with Ron. No unnecessary exposition. Just instructions. And that meant everything had lined up. But then another message. From someone I hadn't heard from in years. Is she still wearing the bracelet? No name. No number saved. Just that. And I knew exactly who it was. Her old mentor. The woman who introduced her to the loop. The one I hadn't seen since she toasted our engagement with a grin too sharp for champagne. The mentor who once told her over dinner, loud enough for me to hear. Secrets aren't dangerous. Unkept secrets are. And now she was texting me? I responded, not anymore. I took it off her wrist while she slept. It was a lie, but I needed to see her reaction. She replied immediately. Then it's already too late. 3 dots appeared, then vanished, then reappeared. And finally, you're not the target anymore. I stared at that message for a full minute. Then I looked up at the folded tie still sitting on the kitchen counter, because I suddenly realized that tie wasn't a message for me. It was a marker, a signal, and someone else had seen it. The knock came at exactly 9:45 the next morning. Not the usual impatient thudding of a courier or the lazy tap of a neighbor. 3 precise knocks, equally spaced, soft, but intentional, like the sound itself had been rehearsed. I didn't answer right away. Instead, I checked the security feed from the app Charles had installed on the back channel, separate from the system she knew about. The camera was wired into the peephole. What I saw made me pause. A man in a slate gray suit. No briefcase. No clipboard. No name badge. Hands folded in front of him, like a funeral director waiting for the widow to compose herself. The only notable detail was the silver tie pin shaped like a keyhole. I opened the door slowly. He didn't smile. Package for Mr. Landon. That wasn't my name. I let the silence hang. I think you've got the wrong door, I said. No, he replied, tone dry. You've got the right enemies. He reached into his jacket, not quickly, not threatening, and pulled out a slim, black envelope. Placed it gently in my hand. Ron said you'd know what to do with this, he said. Then he turned and walked away. No further words, no glance back. I closed the door and slid the bolt. Inside the envelope, a single flash drive. Matte black. No markings. Just a label etched into the plastic. SUB Layer 3. There was also a handwritten note. Do not preview. Upload directly to clearance portal within 12 hours. Auto purge after 1 view. I took the laptop from the safe. Yes, the laptop. The one with no saved passwords, no history, no Wi-Fi auto-connect. I booted it cold and ran it on a wired connection through a VPN tunnel that looped through 7 countries. Then I uploaded the drive to the clearance portal Ron had built into a dummy charity site. Looked like a donation page for sea turtles. Actually led to a ghost database that only recognized my IP once per session. As soon as the upload completed, the screen blinked white, then black. Then a single sentence appeared. Target match confirmed. Distribution pending. No names. No receipts. Just that. And yet I felt something shift. Not in the room. Out there. By 12:10 p.m., the ripples began. First, Halbridge's LinkedIn went dark. Then his investor portfolio on Stratusbridge was pulled down for revision. Then a quiet press release about a leadership restructuring initiative across multiple investment arms. Then I got the real blow. A call. From her number. I picked up. She didn't speak right away. I could hear breathing sharp, uneven. Then, you made a mistake. I didn't reply. You don't know who you're dealing with. I'm starting to, I said. I didn't give them anything direct, she snapped. I didn't hand them documents. I didn't break into your systems. They just listened. You wore the bracelet. You were the system. Silence. Then, you know they'll come for you. No, I said, they'll come for you. You broke protocol. You got seen. And you made the fatal error of underestimating your husband. You were never supposed to get involved. And you were never supposed to forget who pays the mortgage on this house. That shut her up. Then her voice dropped to a whisper. Why didn't you stop when you had the upper hand? Why go nuclear? I told you, I said calmly. There would be consequences. She tried one last maneuver. Her tone softened. old familiarity dripping back in. "We could still fix this," she said. "If we leave now. Together. We could disappear before it escalates." I almost laughed. "You don't run from a fire when you set it," I said. "You watch it burn." Then I hung up. And that's when I noticed it. A letter had been slipped under the door. Cream envelope. Expensive stock. No name. Inside, a single card. Printed in clean serif font. "Some debts can't be paid in silence." And handwritten underneath, in red ink. "Ron didn't warn you about her, did he?" Her? There was someone else? Someone Ron hadn't mentioned? And just like that, the game shifted again. Not backward. Deeper. I didn't call Ron. Not immediately. I needed time to think quietly, without voices in my ear telling me how many backup plans to activate or what digital switches to flip. Because the second I called him, everything would accelerate. And for the first time, I wasn't sure if I wanted it to. That card, the handwriting, that ink, it didn't match anything Ron had ever used. He was precise. Clinical. He didn't warn, he neutralized. But this was personal. Emotional, even. And the phrase? "Ron didn't warn you about her, did he?" Not them. Not it. Her. I sat in the den for over an hour just staring at that card, trying to trace every memory, every skip beat, every smile my wife gave that lingered 2 seconds too long when someone else was in the room. And then I remembered the charity gala. 3 years ago. We were in the garden atrium, slow jazz and free champagne. I was talking to a CFO about coastal zoning permits. She was 30 feet away, laughing with a woman I didn't know, tall, red dress, dark hair swept up like a movie villain. That woman locked eyes with me once. Just long enough to make me feel like I'd missed something. A glance that said, "I know who you are. You don't know who I am. That won't last." I remember asking my wife who she was. "Oh," she said, with a strange tightness in her voice, "that's Eleanor. She funds weird things." That was it. That was all she said. I never saw her again. Until now. Because at 4:31 p.m., my phone vibrated with a notification from Lila. Subject: urgent. Eleanor Sable. Not who she says she is. I opened the file. Inside, a dossier. Aliases: Eleanor Sable, Lenora Syme, E. Shaw, Ella Stone. Occupation: private wealth consulting. Translation: handler. Her job was to recruit women like my wife, ambitious, sharp, underestimated. Women in high positions of proximity. Not necessarily CEOs or founders, but their partners. Spouses. Shadows in the room with front row access to everything. Lila's report had photos. Eleanor with my wife. Eleanor at the Savannah retreat. Eleanor at the same hotel Ron had flagged earlier under a different name. But what chilled me wasn't where she'd been. It was where she hadn't. No digital record of school, employment, family. Even Lila could only pull fragments. One lease agreement in Malta. One account registration in the Caymans. A car registered to a holding company that no longer existed. She was a ghost with perfect makeup. I called Charles. "I need context," I said. "Now." He didn't hesitate. "Eleanor Sable is old loop. Pre-structure. Before it became an institution. She's not a recruiter. She's an arbiter." "What does that mean?" "It means when a pawn gets sloppy, she steps in." I stood up, hard hammering, but my voice stayed level. "So she's here because of my wife?" "Yes," he said. Then added, "or because of you." That stopped me cold. "Explain." "You've drawn attention," Charles said. "Loop doesn't like attention. It likes compliance, silence, access. You lit up half their network by triggering that clearance upload." "Ron told me to." "And Ron has his own debt with them," Charles said quietly. I said nothing. Just stared at the envelope again. That ink. That phrasing. It wasn't a warning. It was a test. And maybe an invitation. "You said she's an arbiter," I said. "Then that means she wants something." Charles sighed. "Yeah, but what she wants, you might not be willing to give." At 6:03 p.m., my wife returned. I heard her before I saw her shoes on tile. Keys dropped too loudly, like she was making sure I knew she was home. I didn't move. She came into the den, stopped when she saw the envelope on the coffee table. And that's when I saw it: fear. Real fear. No pretense. No sarcasm. She picked it up, looked at the card, then sat down slowly and said, "You need to leave. Tonight." "Why?" I asked. She's coming, my wife whispered. And when she does, it's not about me anymore. Then who is it about? You. She didn't blink. You took their attention. Now she wants to know why. I smiled, slow and sharp. Good. Let her come. My wife shook her head. I suddenly glassy. No, you don't get it. Eleanor doesn't come to talk. I leaned forward, elbows on knees. Neither do I. And that was the moment I realized this wasn't just revenge anymore. This was warfare. Elegant, quiet, dressed in red. And I was ready for it. Eleanor arrived without ever stepping foot in my home. At least not physically. Her first strike came at 2:12 a.m. A soft chime. My phone screen lighting up with an unknown number. No caller ID. No origin. Just one word on display. Now. I let it ring out. Moments later, my desktop monitor flickered to life. I hadn't touched it. It wasn't even supposed to be on. And yet there it was, humming softly, pixels shifting from black to white like a stage curtain rising. On the screen, a live feed. Of me. From my office. But the camera wasn't mine. It was positioned behind me. High angle. Almost cinematic. Which meant someone had been in this house. Not recently. Today. I stood, turned slowly, scanned the corners of the room. Nothing. No wires. No blinking lights. But the feeling crept up like a cold breath on the back of my neck. I knew what this was. Message number 1. I see you. Then the screen changed. Footage of my wife, walking across a marble lobby. Not Savannah. Not the Tanager building. Somewhere colder. Glass walls. People with lanyards and sharp expressions. She looked different. No bracelet. No pretense. Just her, stripped down to whatever they had made her. She was delivering something. A package. She handed it to a tall woman in a long gray coat with gloves and no purse. The woman didn't say thank you. She just turned, opened the package, and revealed its contents. My signature. From a power of attorney form I'd shredded 6 months ago. A form I hadn't told anyone about. The screen cut to black. Then a sentence appeared. Let's not pretend either of us are victims. There was a button underneath, accept terms. I didn't click it. I unplugged the monitor entirely. But the message had landed. This wasn't about who was right or wrong anymore. It was about ownership. And Eleanor was telling me, in her elegant, surgical way, you were never the hunter. Just the more patient prey. At 9 a.m. sharp, Ron called. You've been breached, he said without preamble. No kidding. It was deliberate, he continued. They didn't take anything. They left something. What? Authority. I waited. You're now listed as secondary power holder on a dormant shell corp tied to Halbridge's real estate investment arm. It went live at 2:14 a.m. 2 minutes after that call. Why would they give me anything? They didn't, Ron said. They gave you liability. I froze. That shell owns property in 5 states, he continued, all of which are now under audit, 2 of which have been flagged for foreign cash movement. Guess whose name is on the paper trail? And just like that, Eleanor made her second move. Message number 2. If you escalate, you don't just destroy her, you destroy yourself. I exhaled, slow and deliberate. What are my options? Option 1, Ron said, we go full storm. Disclose everything. Set fire to the structure and deal with the fallout. You'll survive, but scorched. And 2, you walk away. Quietly. You disappear from the narrative. We bury you so deep in procedural obscurity they forget your face. And her. She burns either way. He paused. But Eleanor? Eleanor doesn't burn. She rewrites the fire code. I didn't respond right away. I was watching my wife again from the kitchen doorway. She was on the balcony, barefoot, holding her phone like it was a detonator. Her lips moved, whispering. She wasn't crying. She was praying. To what? I have no idea. Maybe to Eleanor. Maybe to something even colder. I returned to my office. Opened the drawer. Inside, the drive Charles gave me. Still unused. Still capable of sending everything to a very public inbox. And next to it, the final envelope Ron had delivered, the one marked in red. A choice. Turn the key. Or bury it. And then my phone buzzed again. A text. From a number that had sent nothing since October 2021. If you want your story back, come alone. 5 p.m. You know where. No signature. But I did know where. because only 3 people in the world knew what story meant to me, and 2 of them were dead. The third? Eleanor. This wasn't a threat. It was an invitation to the endgame. The meeting place was so obvious it felt wrong. An old bookstore, shuttered for months, faded awning, padlock that didn't lock. We used to walk past it on Sunday mornings before the market, before things fell apart, before the bracelet, before the loop, before I started wondering if I was sleeping next to a strategist or a saboteur. I arrived at 4:57 p.m. No car, no lookout, just the door, slightly ajar. Not open. Offered. Inside, the air smelled like dried paper and lemon oil. Rows of untouched shelves. A single table in the back. 1 chair occupied, the other facing it. She was already there. Eleanor. Older than I remembered, but not weaker. Poised. The kind of woman who didn't need to speak to control a room. She just had to exist inside it. I wondered if you'd come, she said, no smile. You told me to. That was an opportunity, not a command. She gestured at the chair. Sit or don't. I sat. She slid a file across the table. It looked like a job interview portfolio. Leather-bound. Smelled like ink and purpose. Inside, my entire professional history. But rewritten. Not forged. Rewritten. New firm. New board affiliations. New bio. Repositioned to make me look like a non-critical casualty of someone else's crime. Like a man who nearly got pulled into something, but had the good sense to walk away. You're cleaning my record, I said. I'm simplifying it, she replied. You're a smart man. You know how this ends if we both keep pushing. What about my wife? She was never meant to be permanent, Eleanor said, without cruelty. Just fact. She was a means. She overplayed her role. Emotional entanglements, always a mistake. I looked up at her. You recruited her. She recruited herself, Eleanor said. She had ambition, resentment, and access. That's the whole resume. I said nothing. She leaned forward. Here's what happens next. You take the offer. You vanish from the field. You let the system reset. In return, we give you silence. No lawsuits. No reputational attrition. You get to live like it was all almost a scandal. And if I don't, Eleanor didn't blink. Then you'll be remembered as a disgraced husband who leaked fake documents in a last-ditch effort to punish his wife for leaving. And you'll believe it yourself within 6 months. Because memory is a privilege. We know how to revoke it. That part didn't scare me. The next part did. She opened her purse and slid a small photo across the table. My father. From a private gathering in 1994. His hand on someone's shoulder I recognized but couldn't place. History, she said, isn't just about what we build. It's what we owe. That's when I realized. This wasn't about me. It never was. My wife wasn't the first. I wasn't the first. My father may not even have been the first. This went back decades. Blood. Signatures. Patterns. I have one more move, I said. I know, she replied. But if you play it, the consequences will not be binary. I'm not looking for black and white. Then you'll be buried in gray. I stood, pushed the chair back gently. You were right about one thing, I said. And what's that? I'm not the victim. She studied me. Then what are you? I looked down at the folder. At the rewritten life. At the photo of a past I hadn't consented to inherit. I'm the ghost in your archive, I said. The one you thought you filed, but didn't. And then I left. I didn't take the folder. I didn't close the door. Because Eleanor already knew. I wasn't choosing escape. I was choosing the final move. And when I returned home, the house was dark, but the red envelope was gone. In its place, a handwritten note from my wife. Whatever happens now, don't forget, I tried to warn you. I just didn't realize I was warning you too late. Attached to it, her bracelet. Cracked. Torn open at the clasp. The signal was dead, but the game was not. The upload took 7 seconds. Not to the press, not to the authorities, but to one place Eleanor never anticipated. Loop's internal dead letter vault. A kill switch Dropbox built for internal betrayals, never meant to be used by an outsider. But Ron had access. And Ron had debts, which meant I had leverage. Inside the payload, timestamps, IP logs, cross-synced metadata, every recorded whisper they tried to erase. Including one crucial fragment, an uncut audio clip of Eleanor herself, naming Halbridge and 3 other silent board members as primary architects of strategic misdirection via spouse channels. No headlines. No explosions. Just a quiet implosion. 12 hours later, the first fracture surfaced. Stratusbridge postponed all board activity pending internal realignment. By midnight, Halbridge's private jet was grounded. His legal team issued a preemptive statement filled with words like oversight and restructuring. By dawn, Eleanor was gone. Not disappeared, just relocated. Wiped? No trace of flight logs. No cards swiped. Ron said it best. She's not running. She's already somewhere else, rewriting the next version. And my wife? Gone too. Not vanished, just removed. Her email accounts purged. Her access revoked. Her name left off every committee, board, and club invite she once claimed made her visible again. She didn't call. Didn't write. But I got one final delivery. A small manila envelope slid under my office door. No stamp. Just a handwritten sentence on the front. You made your move. So did I. Inside, a key. Not anything I recognized. And a single flash drive. I didn't plug it in. Not because I was afraid. Because I understood. At last. The game had never been about loyalty or betrayal. Not really. It was about control. Who held the last word? Who turned the final lock? So I placed the key in my safe. Labeled the drive with a piece of masking tape, in case of arrogance. And I got back to work. Quietly. Publicly, I was reappointed to the board. Unexpected absence resolved, the minutes read. Privately, I knew better. The war hadn't ended. It had reset. One layer lower. One circle tighter. And me? I wasn't the husband anymore. I wasn't even the target. Now, I was something far more dangerous. A man who knows exactly how the system works and walks inside it, smiling,